Development of poetry. Drama split in two directions depending on the writers. The more serious writers imitated the actions of the good people, i.e. representing the higher moral standard by doing songs to the gods and of famous people. And the more trivial writers imitated the actions of the bad people, starting with satires using the more colloquial style for their writing, which further creates the distinction between heroic writing and lampooning writing, later known as tragedy and comedy, respectively. Because of these differences, tragedy was considered the higher art, and still is to this day. Comedy is considered the lower form of art because it engages with the ludicrous, and ludicrous is considered a subdivision of the ugly. This doesn't make a comedy good or bad, just that it won't be treated with the same sincerity or appreciation that a tragedy will. And even though they both evolved to have more than one actor, a diminished need for a chorus, the development of dialogue, the creation of acts and scenes, until they both sort of resemble something that we now recognize as drama. The plot being the biggest development with the use of a narrative, which has a limited time span over it, unlike the tradition of epic poetry which it was born out of. What is a story? A story is an imitation of events that make up a single narrative that is thematically important, using harmonious and rhythmic language in an artistic way, that create an emotional reaction through pity and fear. A story will have a plot, and a plot has events within it, and events are imitations of actions. So fundamentally, a story is an imitation of actions. And actions mean that people are going to be involved who have distinctive characteristics and motivations. Now that's as true in real life as it is in drama. It's by a person's motivations and characteristics that you can judge if an action was a success or a failure. So a character's actions must imitate their motivations and characteristics, and happen in an order that reflects that. So every dramatic story has 6 parts: the plot, characters, thought, diction, spectacle, and song. 2 parts of the medium, 3 the object, and 1 the mode. Plot being events that are arranged in a sequence that will elicit an emotional reaction. Character is the qualities that we give to people in the story who are observing, participating in, or have an opinion on the action. Thought is when a person in the story has a statement proved or disproved, or when someone expresses a general truth. They can also say what is true or possible in a given situation, which will reveal something about themselves because of what they are choosing or avoiding in that situation. But thought is really about what they do in relation to what they say, which will reveal who they really are, not just taking what they say as the truth. Diction is the way people in the story speak, and what they mean when they say what they say. Spectacle is creating something that induces a sense of wonder, which really has more to do with technicians than it does with writers, but we should at least be aware of its use. Song is the use of music to make the story more interesting. All these elements are important when writing, but most important is the structure of the plot, that being the order of the events. Storytelling is not an imitation of people, but an imitation of actions and life. Life is a series of actions which have consequences, which result in more actions. It doesn't produce a quality. Actions produce more actions. A character can be made up of different qualities, but it's what they do with those qualities that make them good or bad, or happy or sad, or lucky or unlucky. The most emotionally powerful moments in a plot is the reversal, which is where a character moves from a good to bad situation, and recognition scenes. Aristotle argues that dramatic action is not about revealing a character's qualities, but what a character will do in a given situation. So the character is less important than the actions that the character is undertaking. Because if you have lots of good scenes where we find out about the qualities of each person in the story, and it's executed perfectly, but the scenes are clunkily put together, you aren't going to achieve the dramatic effect. But if you have a character with not very well defined qualities, but lots of conflict and a driving plot skillfully put together, then you're going to achieve some level of drama. Tips. When working on the story, the writers need to see the whole plot as clearly as possible, in order to figure out what works and what needs to be kept, and where there are inconsistencies or irrational moments. If the writer doesn't appreciate the perspective of the audience, then the audience will spot the problems and be turned off. The writer should start with the story's general outline, and then as you fill in the scenes, you can add more detail. Anything that doesn't directly matter to the moving forward of the plot does not need to be included. All scenes and sequences of scenes must be relevant to the story. The essence of the story is plot. All the details to fill in the story belong in the scenes, not the overall plot of the story. The writer needs to figure out the right way to show how the characters are feeling, so that a natural sympathy is generated between the audience and the characters. If a character is angry, we need to see them being angry. If they're sad, we need to see them being sad, in as real a way as possible, so that an audience can understand and relate to it on an emotional level. Essentially, show, don't tell.